What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I am Sam Oches, editor-in-chief of NRN. Today, we're going to dig into Chi-Chi's resurrection. We learned this week that Chi-Chi's, after a 20-year absence, could be back on the scene in the near future. Does it have a future? Will people embrace Chi-Chi's after its somewhat spectacular failure 20 years ago? After that, we're going to dig into Technomic. Our friends at Technomic have a preview of the 2025 Top 500, the forecast for the top brands in America. And we're going to get into some of the interesting findings from their preview. And then after that, we'll talk about some new store prototypes that are coming out from brands like Pizza Hut and Portillo's. Once again, I am joined by my colleague, the incomparable Alicia Kelso. Alicia, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Alicia, you, first off, wore the most appropriate sweatshirt for our conversation, since we will talk about Pizza Hut later.
Yes.
You have a lot of restaurant merch.
I have, so do you. We that's part of the job, apparently, and I love it.
Yeah, we do enjoy it. For all of you who have sent, thank you. This is not a plea for more, but I'm just telling you thank you for those who have sent some stuff.
We won't be mad if there's...
Well, Alicia, what's your favorite? What's the best thing you ever got?
I get the Arby's meat sweats.
That's what I was looking to. I think the meat sweats were that was the most memorable piece of restaurant merch.
See Crocs.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. They have fried chicken giblets.
Oh, there you go. But in KFC, I mean, like you in Louisville, KFC is just like right up your alley. Is everybody in Louisville wearing KFC merch? It feels like
That's a great question. I don't know if I pay attention or if everybody's just envious of me, which they should be.
That's right. It absolutely should be. I wonder. I should start wearing more Wendy's merch around town. I did wear my Wendy's t-shirt around town once, and somebody asked me if I worked there. No, but in a way.
In a way. Yeah.
Anyway, Alicia, how was your week this week? Post-Thanksgiving, we've all caught up on, you had some good football news. Not to make this extra serving all about football again.
Yeah. And the Lions won on a walk-off again. So things are good in Michigan. But yeah.
Their season feels special, by the way. I don't want to hurt it, but it feels like we're inevitably hurtling toward Lions-Chiefs, and it's going to be David and Goliath.
Yes. But yeah, the week was fine. It was a busy news week, which was I kind of prefer. Last week kind of drove me nuts a little bit with the holiday.
You're weird that way. You like to work.
I do. Because we have a fun industry, and there's always exciting things going on. And this week was certainly illustrates that. I think I sent you some ideas, and I just kept typing, like, this is cool. We could talk. We got 4 hours for this podcast.
That's right. Hey, we should do a special edition of Extra Serving. We're going to be here for 4 hours. Maybe that'll be our live stream. We'll do a live stream. Come join us for Restaurant Industry Hour. It's going to be 10 hours long. We're going to spend a whole day with you talking about the news. All right, well, let's get into it, because as you alluded to, we did have a lot of news this week. I mentioned at the outset, but Chi-Chi's, I don't know if this was the biggest news of the week, but I think a lot of us, it certainly was the biggest mainstream restaurant news. This got picked up all over the country by consumer media as well, because Chi-Chi's was a beloved restaurant chain for about 30 years, founded in the 70s, for many, many years, beloved restaurant chain. However, it went through a number of leadership changes, had some poor leadership, some bad decisions that were made. And then shortly after it filed for bankruptcy in 2004, it was revealed that they were the source of a hepatitis A outbreak that sickened over 600 people and killed 4. And they traced it to some green onions that were served at Chi-Chi's. That was really the final nail in the coffin. The last restaurant closed in 2004. Now, the news is that the founder's son did he acquire the trademark from Hormel, or he's partnering with
partnership? Yep.
Partnership. Mm-hmm. So Hormel owned the trademark to Chi-Chi's because of some CPG products that Chi-Chi's has been making, I guess, maybe even still.
Yep.
And the son of the founder is partnering with Hormel to reopen Chi-Chi's. Alicia, do we think that's a good thing? I mean, do we think people want Chi-Chi's back?
I want Chi-Chi's back. So,
that's all that matters.
And that's all that matters. No, I'm Midwestern. I mean, we had a Chi-Chi's across the street from my dorm in college. So when this news broke earlier this week, I received several texts from my friends in college, or from college. I've been receiving emails too since I wrote that story. We've got our email address at the bottom of all of our stories. I've gotten probably half a dozen emails from people just expressing their excitement about this. And I think the timing is kind of weird because we've talked about Chi-Chi's a little bit of late. When I interviewed the president of Texas Roadhouse, Gina Tobin, about her history in the industry, she got her start at Chi-Chi's.
Yeah.
And I remember being on campus at their headquarters and getting really excited. Chi-Chi's, it's, and we talked about it as well, going back to that hepatitis A outbreak that was ultimately the final nail in their coffin, as you stated. We kind of touched on that when McDonald's E. coli outbreak happened in October.
Yep.
So as it goes, like you said, they closed the doors on their last domestic restaurant 20 years ago, and had gone through those several ownership changes before that outbreak. Earlier this week, the guy's name is Michael McDermott. He was the son of co-founder Marno McDermott. And he did strike that deal with Hormel Foods, which owns Chi-Chi's trademark. We still get Chi-Chi's salsa and chips all the time. Again, just to sort of relive, it is a cult. It is sort of a cult following. And I think with all the feedback that I've gotten, just personally, personal anecdotes, I think you can reiterate the excitement that people outside of me are feeling about this brand. And I don't know another concept that has done what they did back in the 80s and 90s with the fried ice cream, with the drink specials that they were known for, the chimichangas, all of it. Tex-Mex now is more popular than it was back then.
Yep.
So I think the timing here could be interesting. I can't think of a lot of full service concepts. Chuy's, of course, but otherwise I can't think of a lot of full service concepts that, could directly compete with this other than, like Chuy's, maybe Tumbleweed. Consumers are still very familiar with the brand because of that retail presence.
Right.
And I think that is super helpful as this Michael McDermott guy wants to bring it back. Now, I've got to tamp down my excitement here because this is just an idea on paper right now. Until a few are up and running, will we know what the actual potential is here? And I'm optimistic, but I'm cautiously optimistic to overuse that phrase. This is not an easy environment. And, what Chi-Chi's has going for it that perhaps some other brands that are trying to make a comeback, Steak and Ale comes to mind, the Ground Round, Bennigan's. We've heard about all of these sort of concepts that went away for a little bit that are trying to sort of resurrect themselves. What Chi-Chi's has going for it, again, is that retail presence.
Yeah.
People know what Chi-Chi's. I know what Chi-Chi's is, but I'm of an older generation. So the challenge here will be to bridge that gap between, people like me who went to Chi-Chi's, after an exam and drank 25-cent drafts in college and the Gen Z, demographic that maybe has not heard of it other than maybe seeing the chips and salsa on the grocery shelves. Again, it's not an easy environment, so time will tell. But for now, anecdotally, I can see in my inbox, in my text messages, in my own mind, there is a sense of excitement here.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, I've seen this story picked up by many mainstream news outlets, which to me means that excitement is real. Especially, I'm sure, among our generation's folks who remember it from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and are eager to welcome it back. That's why that excitement is there. Now, of course, to your point, we don't know the intentions for Michael McDermott and does he think this is going to be a 100, 200 unit chain at some point? Is he going to open one restaurant and leave it as sort of an homage to his dad? We don't know. But I think, again, to your point, there is a lot of opportunity if this was something he wanted to scale. And by the way, he is a former restaurant executive. Mm-hmm. I mean, he knows how to scale restaurants.
Yeah.
He's been with a few other concepts in the past. So if anybody could do it, son of the founder, restaurant executive, he could genuinely do it. I think we're going to learn a lot about brand affinity here because, like you said, the CPG products, the retail products, have carried the name Chi-Chi's into the future. However, I mean, I remember I didn't have a Chi-Chi's where I grew up. However, I do remember going to it when we would travel. I remember the commercials. Like Chi-Chi's is embedded in my brain from the 90s when it was really in its heyday. And so I can't say that I'm as excited as you are because I don't have the same kind of like great memories, but I remember Chi-Chi's certainly. And so if I saw a Chi-Chi's open up and was near me, I was like, oh, hey, Chi-Chi's. Well, sure. But how long is people's memories? Because as we were talking about with McDonald's E. coli, we talked about with Jack in the Box with their E. coli in the 90s. Could people still remember what happened in 2003 and 2004 with the hepatitis A outbreak? I believe, I really believe today, especially post-election, people's memory is very short. So I think Chi-Chi's has probably cleared that window that perhaps 20 years is enough for them to come back and be like, hey, look, I mean, of course, with something like that outbreak, there's a large part of, we did what we could. It was terrible, but like, it's not like we maliciously tried to sicken people. But there's always a trust issue with food service stuff or with food safety issues. Always with foodborne illness, you always lose some trust with the customer in the restaurant. Because as our colleague Jonathan Mays recently pointed out, is your first goal as a restaurant is don't make your customers sick. So anyway, we'll see. We'll find out if that brand affinity can stick around, can rebuild the trust, can capitalize perhaps on the trend toward nostalgia. That could be really helpful to connect with Gen Z who won't remember Chi-Chi's. Gen Z were babies and not born when Chi-Chi's was in its heyday. So could the nostalgia for that experience help to connect with younger consumers and help give it a kind of lift off? We'll see.
Yep. Unfortunately, like I mentioned, we have been talking about Chi-Chi's a little bit more because everybody's gone back to, it was the largest outbreak and continues to have been the largest outbreak in American history.
It's in textbook.
Yeah. And so like, unfortunate timing here for this announcement, but obviously food safety has really evolved and progressed in 20 years, both, from a regulatory standpoint and from a technology standpoint. So, hopefully that is not top of mind anymore.
So another point that's interesting to segue into our next topic, Chi-Chi's being a full service restaurant, you pointed out some of the competitors like a Chuy's, like there is some opportunity here. It's not a very saturated space, this sort of full service Tex-Mex category. But full service right now is not having a great time. They did not have a great 2024. Of course, you can point to some of the high profile bankruptcies like Red Lobster, like TGI Fridays as being examples of full service companies that really struggled. So the full service category is still trying to find its footing in the post-COVID, post-inflation economy. But I bring that up because our friends at Technomic gave us a preview of the top 500, which will be released in the spring. Obviously, this is one of the most important reports every year for the restaurant industry to see who are the top 500 restaurant chains by sales. Really a temperature check, kind of gives us a gauge of where's this industry at, who's growing, who's not growing, who's rising, who's falling. And so we got a preview of this from Technomic. Alicia, you had a great write-up about this yesterday, that Technomic forecast. One of the things that was mentioned was this retrenchment of full-service concepts. Tell me more about what we know from Technomic's data as it relates to the full-service category.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, a caveat here, the full report comes out in the spring, so this is subject to adjustments, the data that we got from Technomic, but, the crystal ball is starting to formulate a better picture because we have some fourth quarter data in already. And as you mentioned, it's just been a crappy year for full service, not just with the bankruptcies that have befallen, TGI Fridays and Red Lobster and several others, but also with mass closures, Denny's, O'Charlie's, Hooters, Applebee's. That's the tip of the iceberg. We've had this conversation on this show before about how closures aren't necessarily a bad thing because we've got to get our houses in order. Yep. And a lot of these concepts like Denny's and Applebee's are doing just that, where they're closing the underperforming stores in order to get that four-wall profitability up so that they can grow again. Others are closing because the competition has become very saturated, not just in the full-service space, especially in the full-service space, but that's not the only place. Full service has way more factors, I guess, against it than it did even just 5 years ago. We went through a full service retrenchment in 2016 and 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So this category in particular tends to ebb and flow.
Oh, yeah.
And I would argue that one of the big issues with full service right now, as consumers are becoming discerning, is a maturation of the fast casual segment.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're on about 20 years of fast casual being a viable competitor. And that's, it's got one generation, in other words, under its belt in the restaurant industry. And it's more evolved. It's more sophisticated now. It's not just a couple of players. It's more, culinary players. Like you've got Cava, you've got Mediterranean specific, you've got Chipotle, Panera, all of these players and consumers are more familiar with full service, fast casual. And so that's more competition. And we have seen this in the past 2 years, especially with the trade up from QSR and the trade down from full service into fast casual. Fast casual has far outpaced growth in all of those other segments. As consumers have less discretionary money to spend, fast casual becomes more attractive than full service because you don't have to factor in the tip or the time and so on and so forth. At the same time, we have, of course, input costs that are going up. So, we mentioned this, I think, last week. Labor costs are about 20% higher. Occupancy costs are about 12 to 15% higher than 2019. The P&L is never going to look like it did in 2019. But for casual dining, especially, that is precarious because they have bigger boxes. They tend to have bigger boxes than QSR and fast casual. And so they have to adjust that P&L and make sure that the unit economics work out. And we saw this year with the closures, with the bankruptcies, that we're still sort of adjusting to that new reality on the P&L. And so the point here is that Technomic predicts the footprint of full service chain restaurants in the top 100 is going to shrink in 2025, which will mark the first time the category has shrunk since 2020. And we all know what happened in 2020. So,
yeah, it'll be fascinating to watch. All amazing points. Obviously a very complicated environment for full service because there's always a place for full service. I mean, I think part of the problem, as you point out, is competition. I mean, there's just so much competition when you're competing for labor, you're competing for real estate, and competing for customers. There's just a lot to compete with. At the end of the day, though, that people still want the full service experiences. I think back to 15 years ago, right, with the recession. And when the recession happened, same thing. We saw the retrenchment in full service as fast casual really first started to take off, that first sort of wave of fast casual. And we all wondered, will full service survive this? Of course, it did fine. It came back in the mid 2010s before it hit that 2016 that you're talking about. It ebbs and it flows. And I think a lot of that is determined by the competition and how many options do customers have available to them. Now, I mentioned this last week. I'll mention it again this week. I really enjoyed the conversation I had with Peter Newland of Gustamo Group on my Takeaway podcast. Go check that out from a week or two ago. Gustamo Group is a Denver-based hospitality group that develops full-service concepts in particular. Now, they are unique in that they are focused purely on Denver and Colorado, and they want to develop these casual suburban restaurants, but with that kind of local independent restaurant flair. So they have a couple of concepts that are multi-unit, but because they're unique to Denver and to Colorado, they feel very of the state, of the area. They are very cued into local customers. And point is, you're going to walk into one and not feel like it's a chain. You're going to feel like this is a local restaurant. But they're dead set on the casual category because they think that what this category is missing is that very experience-driven, authentic hospitality kind of concept in the suburbs where so many people now spend their time post working from home and, all that there's still opportunity there. But again, you have to rise above the competition. You have to get the attention of the customer by A, obviously having a great pitch, great marketing message that gets them in the door in the first place, and then B, providing a wonderful hospitality experience. Great food, of course, that's table stakes. We all get that. And they should leave feeling like they had a great experience because you can't really help the cost piece of this. I know, Alicia, you guys probably feel this too. When we're deciding where to eat out as a family, I'm like, if I'm going to go to a full service restaurant now as a family of 5, granted one of them doesn't eat real food yet, we're going to spend $100. And I don't want to do that. I want to spend closer to $50, which is insane to say, but that's what fast casual is going to get me, right? Yeah. So that's the real conversation going through your head. But if I spend $100 and we just had a great time, my kids were treated really well and they actually liked the food and they enjoyed themselves and we didn't fight and we felt comfortable, we're going to walk out of there saying, you know what, that $100 is worth it. So I think that ultimately right now for full service may be the biggest challenge is you have to rise above the competition. You have to get their attention. You have to compete for the right labor. You have to compete for the right real estate. And if you can do all those things and provide a great experience, I think you can succeed. Texas Roadhouse, we've talked about them a lot lately, but just look at them. Yep. They're doing all those things, and they are just completely knocking it out of the park. Chili's, another great example.
I mean, I read somewhere where their stock is like 300% higher.
Now that one, of course, also very driven by social media. That may be another crew here, which is, again, connecting with the consumer. Now, I will caveat with this. I think that, especially with something that's driven by a cheese pull on TikTok, that's going to be that's not going to last forever.
Right. No question.
You can't find that next cheese pull on TikTok 3 months later to pump the balloon again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if I can transition real quick, another piece of that Technomic guidance that fits in this conversation that I guess didn't really surprise me, but it still surprises me when I see it, is the top 10 just doesn't change that much, right? McDonald's is always McDonald's and Starbucks is always Starbucks. They're anticipating Chipotle to leapfrog not just Burger King, but also Subway by sales next year. And I was looking at the Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, it totally makes sense because Subway has obviously retrenched and struggled. Burger King has been, pretty flattish. And Chipotle has just been crushing it both from sales and a traffic standpoint for the past several years, including through COVID. Chipotle's only had one negative same-store sales comp, and that was in, Q2 of 2020. And so it's just really insane. But they're going to be number 7 if trends continue the way they are now. They're going to be number 7. And I think what really kind of surprises me, maybe excites me about the potential here is if you look at Burger King's footprint, they're almost at 7,000 domestic units. Subway, of course, has over 20,000 units. And Chipotle finished last year with about 3,400 units. So they're going to leapfrog these two legacy brands with significantly less restaurant locations.
Yeah. And you and I, having both covered this industry for 15 years, I think can both say how seismic this is of Chipotle jumping Subway in particular. Because if I put us in 2009, when you and I started following this industry, Alicia, Subway was number 2 behind McDonald's. And we were talking about, could they get to 50,000 restaurants? Fred DeLuca was talking about opening 50,000 restaurants. And we thought, sky's the limit for Subway. Chipotle, of course, at the time was rising, and I think they might have at the time been in like 24th, 25th biggest restaurant company in the U.S., something like that. They were on their way, but now to see them jump Subway is just obviously says a lot about Chipotle and also says a lot about Subway. But then I'm left to wonder. Taco Bell's not far ahead of that. Like Taco Bell. Now, there is a fairly large gap in sales.
Yeah.
Because the spots on the top 10, there's a couple of spots between Taco Bell and Chipotle, but it's a bigger gap in sales. Whether or not they ever clear that, I don't know. Then if that ever happens, we'll really be talking a lot about how seismic that is. And Chipotle wants to get to 7,000 restaurants, and that's doubling their current count. So if they double their current count and assume that they're at least doubling sales, they could get there. Taco Bell, though, is still chugging on, still doing just fine. I think they'll be okay. But this, to me, I get excited about this too. I think this kind of moving, it's another sort of temperature of where things are with American consumers who can be very mercurial. It takes a lot of time for Subway to all the way on its way down, and Chipotle. Those are my notes to our producer. Please grab those so we can have a button so I can read those whenever I want, but jumping Burger King, I thought was, less of a big deal. I think jumping Subway to me is just such a big deal. And final point I'll say too, going back to what you're saying about how much sales they're doing out of how many locations. My favorite statistic to give people is always the number of locations that Chick-fil-A has and the number of locations that KFC has and how much they do in sales, and how Chick-fil-A does roughly 4 times the sales in roughly half the number of locations. I don't mean to sully
and without a
great name of KFC.
Without a full business day.
Yeah, exactly. Without one whole day of the week.
52 days of the year. Is that right? 52 weeks of the year? Yeah.
52.
Okay.
We're journalists. We're not mathematicians, guys. But yes, anyway, so the top 500, always one of the most exciting times of the year. The Technomic top 500 will come out in the spring. We're all over it. That is in our June issue of Nation's Restaurant News, so you can get much, much more. But if you want more from the preview, because we didn't even get into all of the preview, you can head to nrn.com right now, and you can check out Alicia's report there. I'm going to summon our extra serving for the day so we can get into our next topic. We're going to talk about store prototypes. We've been talking about store prototypes. I mean, going back to like COVID and when we were all talking about off premises and how to develop new restaurants around it and the new realities. Here to join us to talk about the new prototypes that have rolled out is NRN senior editor Ron Ruggless. Ron, welcome to Extra Serving.
A pleasure to be here.
So, Ron, we are going to talk about specifically new prototypes from Pizza Hut and Portillo's. Now, I was just saying to Alicia, we've been talking about new prototypes, these fancy new prototypes specifically designed around off-premises service since 2020, since everybody thought that dine-in was dead and we'd never eat inside a restaurant again, and we were all going to want takeaway and delivery. So now I feel like we have 2 prototypes that are kind of almost feels like with Pizza Huts in particular, almost feels like it's about 3 years too late. Like it's almost like the mock-ups are finally coming to life, and it took them a couple years to get off the ground, but still noteworthy. And these 2 prototypes both opening in your neck of the woods, Ron, down there in the Dallas area, and one of them you even got to visit, the Portillo's one. So let's start there. Let's start with the Portillo's new restaurant of the future. What is of the future about this restaurant?
They have said, the chief financial officer has said that all 2025 builds are going to be on this basis. It's about 1,500 square feet smaller than a typical Portillo's. And it's, I think, coming in around 626,250 square feet. Okay.
So that helps them find better real estate, I imagine.
Right, and also the build-out costs are less. Their build-out costs are $5.2 to $5.5 million, which are down from the 7,000 square foot box that they were in when they first opened in the market.
Still far, far bigger than your traditional fast casual because of the sheer numbers that Portillo's does. But it seems to like they're facilitating a lot more off-premises here because as our audience can see, Ron took lots of pictures, and we have a gallery up at nrn.com. You can go check out pictures from this new Portillo's. Double drive-through, kiosk ordering, pickup station, a lot of off-premises facilitation happening here, which I imagine will mean that they can shrink the box, but they can keep up their sales levels, right, Ron?
Right. They're hoping to keep up their AUVs, which I think are close to 10 million. For Portillo's, but they're going to do that through the off-premises. They've got dedicated parking for DoorDash and the third-party deliverers, as well as first-party deliverers, and they've added at this location a grab-and-go section near for basic customers who are in, just can grab drinks, sandwiches, cakes, things like that.
I hope nobody calls me a basic customer ever, because
you'll never be basic.
You don't look like somebody who wants to get our premium beef hot dog. You look like somebody who's basic. What would be in the grab and go at Portillo's? Did they tell you?
But they have it laid out. It's lighted. They've got drinks, which bottled drinks to go, as well as things like their very signature cake.
Got it. And technology power, the kiosks too. Has Portillo's used kiosks in their restaurants before?
They have not used a lot of kiosks. They've always been very people-based, and they have 3 kiosks at this location. I think that says a lot about the acceptance of behavior for kiosk use among the general consuming public.
For sure. All right, so before we go to Pizza Hut, which I know you can tell Alicia's dying to do based on the sweatshirt. Alicia, tell me what you think about the Portillo's restaurant of the future.
What impresses me the most is how the brand is translating into Ron's market. It's a Midwestern brand, and I think it's a bold move for them to experiment with a new prototype in a new market. But why wouldn't they? The consumers in Dallas, where Ron is, they don't know Portillo's traditionally, and so they want to translate the brand down there. Why not experiment with a new prototype? It also goes back to, Sam, what you and I were just talking about with the full service category and its struggles, and some of those struggles coming from higher occupancy costs from bigger boxes. It's not just full service, it's struggling with that. Everybody is struggling with higher occupancy costs. That's why we're seeing the boxes shrink across the board, and this is a good example of, again, how to save on that P&L.
For sure. All right, let's talk about Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut also debuting a new prototype in Plano, I believe, is the first location for this prototype. It is going to be a drive-thru Pizza Hut. Now, I mentioned the 2020 thing because you guys remember when we all saw these renderings of prototypes that were super futuristic and, had all of the robotic, carry the food down to the thing, kind of like what we saw out of Taco Bell Defy and Chick-fil-A's new prototype that, Alicia, that you went and toured. They had a lot of kind of fancy bells and whistles. But what I think Pizza Hut's opening now is kind of more like a realistic version of what all of that led to, which is that it does have a pickup station. It does have, you can go and you can order there, I think. But it's got a drive-thru, and it's got a drive-thru specific menu. So obviously drive-thru business continues to be elevated. So they're trying to meet that need. They're offering some ready-to-eat product in the drive-thru. Pizza, of course, not historically a drive-thru category because of the fact that you can't order a pizza in a drive-thru and pick it up within 2 minutes that people expect in a drive-thru. Ron, I want to get your take on this Pizza Hut new prototype. What do you think? I mean, is Portillo's called their prototype the restaurant of the future. Do we think this is going to be the Pizza Hut of the future?
I think you're going to see more of that convenience factor, especially in mobile commuter type markets like Dallas. People spend most of their time in the car. So if you're going to drive through and you're going to eat in your car. You're going to get the food as you're driving around. So I think, you're going to see more of it.
This reminds me a little bit, and I got to credit. Somebody said this on maybe Alicia or Ron. You guys posted this story on LinkedIn, and somebody commented, looks like Little Caesars. Because Little Caesars, yes. Credit to Little Caesars, they have their hot and ready pizzas. They've got, in a lot of locations, pickup windows, not necessarily a drive-through, but very similar. And Little Caesars also developed those pickup lockers. I mean, clearly Pizza Hut, Little Caesars are seeing where the puck is going on off-premises service, or have seen it. If they haven't seen it by now, you're in the wrong industry, because it's pretty obvious where this has been going for the last couple of years. Ron, do you think this looks like what Little Caesars has been doing, or maybe is it more innovative? I don't know.
It's similar to what Little Caesars is doing, but you're seeing it all over QSR. Whataburger has a locker, I think it's near Austin. It's a locker-only delivery. I just think you're going to see this convenience factor play out in the restaurant industry across the board.
What do you think, Alicia?
To your point, it's a fast food prototype. I mean, this is exciting. This is new news for Pizza Hut, right?
Yeah. They need it.
Like you meant, yes, they need a tailwind here. And I think, to zoom out a little bit, I think this also, obviously, this is where the puck has been going since the pandemic, because as we've witnessed, digital is here to stay. It has sustained at 20 to 30% of the mix. And nobody really knew where that was going to land after, got up to like 80 to 90% in the throes of the pandemic. But we now know where it's going to land. And so that is a big chunk of your consumer set wanting the digital, the digital access to your business. again, this isn't new. It's a fast food drive-through type thing, but Pizza Hut and Yum Brands has expressed on several occasions an objective to get most, if not all, of their transactions digital. And it's not the only company that's done that. Wingstop has made the same, statement that they want to get to 100% digital. I think what is interesting to me outside of those narratives is that this illustrates sort of the blurring of the lines that the industry has been barreling toward for the past several years, including especially since the pandemic, when everybody jumped into delivery platforms and adopted these digital ordering or digital forward sort of prototypes. So Pizza Hut doesn't have that delivery advantage anymore. And so it has to play elsewhere. You know, if McDonald's is going to play in the delivery space, Pizza Hut's got to play in the drive-through space. And I think that is an interesting narrative too. There are no segment lines anymore. And this is there's a long way to go, of course, to get a footprint up to, for example, a McDonald's, but everybody is experimenting with this. What I would caution about is we are also simultaneously having a conversation about things getting too transactional in this industry. Mm-hmm. And so I think, Sam, we touched on this last week on this podcast, where the brands that can balance and appease those 20 to 30% digital consumers and more in many cases, and also offer hospitality are the brands that are going to win. There has to be a balance here.
Totally agree. I'll be really interested to see if pizza goes more toward drive-through in general. Pizza has explored drive-through for a long, long time. And of course, Little Caesars has the experience with pickup windows. Fast casual pizza, I think, started to see some opportunity in drive-through, but we all see where that whole category went, kind of fizzled. But I have heard multiple people tell me that they think pizza by the slice through a drive-through window could be something in the future. Color me skeptical. I just think that, pizza, especially, we learned through the fast casual pizza experiment that pizza is a dinner occasion. People don't really need pizza for lunch or want it or crave it as much for lunch. So pizza for dinner, are you going to do that quick drive-through experience? Now, you might do on my way home, pick up a pizza for the family, in which case the experience is more like a order from my phone and get curbside or a pickup window. Am I going to go order in the drive-thru, which tends to be maybe more of a sort of split decision, like impulse kind of a thing? So I'll be interested to see, because I think, what technology can do for facilitating off-premises service. We've all seen we've seen the whole pizza category jump to third-party delivery. Domino's was the last holdout. They finally made the jump. Okay, so we're going to, entrust our delivery with these platforms. Now can we use other technology to facilitate off-premises delivery or service of our pizzas, and could the drive-thru be a piece of that? I think it'll be interesting to watch. I think it makes a lot of sense, but simultaneously, will the customer follow? They didn't follow in the way we thought they would with fast casual pizza, so kind of remains to be seen if they'll follow when it comes to drive-through. Okay, before I let you two go, it is the middle of December now. We are creeping up on Christmas.
Is it the middle? I would argue
it's
early up on us.
Early to mid. It's creeping up on us. It'll be here before you know it. I'll use this opportunity to plug our holiday spectacular on December 18th at 4 p.m. Eastern. Drinked-In Live. Ron is going to host us for our NRN editorial team holiday party that we're live streaming to LinkedIn. Go follow NRN on LinkedIn, and you will get the invite to that, again, December 18th. But before I let you guys go, the lightning round is, what is your favorite Christmas food or beverage? Ron, starting with you.
Oh, it's got to be eggnog. But this year I am doing Aperol and cider, which is a little lighter.
Okay.
And with frozen cranberries as the ice. So it's a very pretty cocktail and fairly simple.
Well, I got to ask, what's your mix-in for eggnog? You must have a mix-in. Is it bourbon?
I use Costco eggnog.
So no?
No, and
just straight up. You like eggnog straight up?
It's a wine-based eggnog out of Costco, and it's one of the most flavorful ones that is on the market. So I have friends who are members of Costco who hook me up.
hook you up. I'll have to pick that up at Costco. Wine-based eggnog. Alicia, you must like bourbon in your eggnog. Or you not drink
I
eggnog.
do like bourbon in my eggnog, and that is exactly what I was going to say. I switch over when the kid gets up to open the presents. We think this is his last year of Santa. But when he gets up to open his presents, we go to Bloody Marys, and then we switch to eggnog and bourbon. It's really healthy up in here. One year,
What I go for, but
one year he got up at 3:30 to open his presents because he was that excited, and we were just sitting there. Well, do we go with the Bloody Mary? I guess
it's like we're still out late at night, kind of.
It's like a liquid salad. It's a liquid salad. Go with it.
But yeah, I always put some bourbon in my eggnog, and I only do it like twice a year, and it's Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
I co-sign on that with the eggnog with bourbon. That's my go-to for Christmas Eve night and Christmas morning. Otherwise, I don't care for eggnog, the flavor of eggnog itself. I need that bourbon or something else in there. I will say my other favorite for Christmas, chocolate mousse. My dad, my whole life, my dad, only will cook on holidays. So whenever he cooks something, it's very, very special. And he has, my entire life, has made this chocolate mousse that we serve on Christmas Eve night. And it is phenomenal. Now he gets all of the grandkids to help him make it, and it's a nice, fun tradition. But I got to plug. I told you guys about this on Slack earlier today. I got to plug. My brother-in-law is a general manager of a hotel here, and his bar just did some Christmas-themed cocktails that were absolutely divine. And the one that I loved the most, it was called Down the Chimney, and it was a smoked old-fashioned. And that I might need to work more into my holiday repertoire because smoke to me evokes sort of winter, fall and winter coziness in the house with a fire going. And they had a piece of smoked cherry wood. So they had used a smoked whiskey, or excuse me, a smoked bourbon. And then they also put a little piece of smoked cherry wood in there. So every time I took a drink, smelled like a fireplace. And it was the absolute best. So you can see where all of our heads go when it comes to Christmas season. Okay, we are going to lead now into an interview that our colleague Leanne Zinsmeister, managing editor for Nation's Restaurant News, had with Broken Yolk Cafe's John Yelastopoulos. Stay tuned for that. But Ron Ruggless, Alicia Kelso, guys, thanks as always for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
All right, I am here with John today. John, how do you say your last name?
Yelastopoulos.
Yelastopoulos?
Yelastopoulos. It's a soft Y, but it's spelled with a G.
Greek, as I'm told. John is the president and owner, I believe, of Broken Yolk Cafe. So we are going to talk about that. John, why don't you tell me the story of how you came to Broken Yolk Cafe?
Well, I came to the States when I was 17 as a teenager. I went to school to learn English and then college. And meantime, I got a job, of course, every young person, the first job is washing dishes. And then I moved up to, being a prep and being a cook, short order cook. I worked in some steakhouse, seafood places, and I would always work two jobs. And I would never see the sun go down and out, and that was not right because I have a family, kids and stuff. I would never see the wife and the kids. Meantime, I was working in restaurants. I was also working in commercial real estate. And that's how I came across Broken Yolk Cafe. And I came here actually to list a place so I could sell it to somebody else. But when I saw the hours, I said, wow, they close at 3:00. Maybe this is something for me. So I can have my nights free. I can see the wife and the kids. And I tried to buy it for about 1.5 years. And finally, after 1.5 years, we made the deal. And here I am. And that was in 1993.
Wow. As a restaurant broker, you must have come across a lot of restaurant chains for sale. What stood out to you about Broken Yolk Cafe? Why was that the one you wanted?
Well, first of all, I liked the hours. I liked the hours so much. And then, breakfast, getting up early in the morning and going home like 3:00, 4:00. That's what stood out to me. and being a family man, you can still spend the evenings with the family. So that's what the most attractive part. And of course, working in restaurants, having that experience in the back of the house, the front of the house as a manager, and also dealing with the business brokerage part, where I learned how to read P&Ls. So those two things helped me, with the operation of the Broken Yolk once I took it over.
And in the last 30 years, you've managed to grow Broken Yolk Cafe. Correct me if I've got any of this wrong, but you've got 40 locations in
correct.
the Southwest, like California, Arizona. What really impresses me about Broken Yolk Cafe is your AUVs. They're approaching 3 million. How do you do it? How do you manage those unit economics?
Well, of course, it wasn't like that in the beginning, but I believe, we're in the people business. Anybody can give you 2 eggs. It's how they give them to you. You got to embrace the guest. You got to give quality. You got to give quantity. You got to be hospitable. You got to have a combination of things in order to make it happen. And then from there on, you try to scale. People were approaching us, for franchises. In the beginning, I didn't want to do anything because the wife was happy. She had the white picket fence, so to speak, right? And the kids were in school. The only thing, we didn't have a dog, and she still wants a dog, but I say no. Anyways, so people were persistent, and we started franchising, and then somebody else came on, and then someone else, and now we're with 11 franchise owners, and they own multiple locations. So we have one that owns 10, one that owns 9, one that owns 6, and so on, and that's what happened.
So as you've grown and scaled and started working with franchisees, how do you stay true to your Broken Yolk roots and make sure that it's still the same Broken Yolk Cafe that you were drawn to back in the early 90s?
Of course, nothing is easy unless we make it easy. So I believe in building infrastructure. I have a great team behind me, with a marketing director, a director of operations, graphics, social media, reputation management, et cetera, et cetera. And collectively, all of us make it happen.
Tell me about Broken Yolk's menu. You're a breakfast and lunch chain. What is on the menu and how does it stand out from the other breakfast and lunch chains in the space?
Well, we have a variety, of course. We have from American flavors to Latin flavors. And remember, we're in Southern California. Mexico, it's 30 minutes away from here. And the Latin population, as you know, it's creeping up. We're at 35, 38% Latinos. So we have maybe 1/3 or maybe more of our menu towards that market. And the Latin population loves us. Yes. We have anywhere from Eggs Benedict, to the American flavors, and then we go to chilaquiles, the Latin flavors. Now, every 6 months, we do an analysis of our menu, and we see what sells, what doesn't sell. So we stay, with the menu. On top of it, we keep innovating and we're moving ahead. And sometimes we create the trends right here, and we believe, of course, in quality. You got to give the people good food, not out of a can or out of a box. It's got to be fresh.
Yeah, it really comes down to the food. What do you see as next for Broken Yolk? You're at 40 units now. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Where do you see the brand?
Well, we like to grow. I mean, I've been doing this now for 32 years, and with the team that I have now, I feel good that I think we can open maybe 4 or 5 every year, and hopefully would reach 50 within 2 years, and then 75, then 100. Why not, right? Only in America.
Only in America, indeed. Do you imagine that the chain will stay in the Southwest and expand from there, or do you look at other markets, other parts of the country?
We're open. We've had inquiries before from back east, and we're talking to people, but at this moment, I cannot say.
Got it. What do you think that being your experience as an immigrant from Greece, how has that helped you in your journey? And also, like, what challenges have you faced as an immigrant in this industry?
Well, what challenges? I like to say I have no challenges. Of course, there's all kinds of stuff. It's how you handle the challenges, And for me, I'm an open-minded kind of person, very positive. So when there's anything negative, any challenge, I always focus on solution. I think once you find the solution, then the challenge doesn't exist. The problem doesn't exist.
That's a great mindset. What do you think that restaurant operators who are like just getting their feet wet, what advice do you have for them, or how can they follow in your footsteps?
They need to work hard and smart. You cannot say, "Oh, I'm tired, I'm gonna go." No, if you're tired, go take 10 minutes break, then get back to work. That's what restaurant business is all about. When it's time to roll up your sleeves and get in the kitchen, you'll get in the kitchen. When it's time to roll up your sleeves and go wash dishes, which I've done many times over the years, you got to do it all. When you're an owner, operator, you got to get in there and do it all.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to share with me or my audience about Broken Yolk Cafe?
Well, we're looking forward to open a lot more locations. We have 40 right now. We have 2 under construction. We have additionally about 4 more under contract, and we're looking, to open in different states.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, John.
Absolutely.